Welcome to the Student Academic Support, or SAS in short's interviewing process. My name is Alyssa Lee and I am the host of these interviews, interviewing both students and teachers as I receive insightful information pertaining to how our local community perceives the issue of weakening academic support systems within Riverside. In today's video, I'll be interviewing first grade teacher Mrs. Johnson as she discusses how she ministers to both the material and mental needs of both her students and their guardians. So without further ado, please enjoy today's video. All right, so I won't take up too much of your time, so I'm just going to ask you a few questions. And just for starters, how would you say for you personally, parental involvement, your parents being involved or your family in your education has helped you throughout your career?
I feel like sometimes it's a give and take because of course you want the parents to be involved, but sometimes like you can't control how they're involved. And so one of the things I think we learned over COVID being on the internet, excuse me, or online was that, that's when we really got to see that you can't control how the parents participate. And so I feel like it's the kids who need the least amount of help are the ones that have the most parent participation. So the parents, they already, do things with them at home and they show up, at school. And so those are the kids that do thrive and are doing well and they turn in their homework and they, get their classwork done. Whereas the ones that you would like to show up, those are the students that need more help. So if they're not getting it, parents aren't helping at school and a lot of times aren't helping at home much either. So, but it is helpful when parents are connected and on board with what you're doing and staying abo- um staying on top of what they're supposed to be doing as far as checking the backpacks and making sure they're getting their reading in. So sometimes you try to enforce things, but it's just not happening. So I mean, you can only do so much, but the participation is definitely a key factor.
Mm. And for you as a teacher, like for those students whose parents may not be as involved, how do you help, like, go about helping them?
So I continue to reach out to the parents just because sometimes it's not a matter of they don't want to help. Sometimes they don't know how to help. And so they just don't. So sometimes I try to just make it easier. Like, let's say if a parent asks a question, I'll put the answer out to like my whole parent group. So like I'll send a message on our class dojo because other parents might have the question but just didn't ask. And I always like try to reiterate, like, ask me anything because it doesn't take anything for me to make a quick video showing you how to do a math problem because our math is different. And so how to do the steps or, show you the concept of what we're trying to do for anything like that. So I will try to put out more messages and to make them feel more comfortable approaching and asking those questions. And then, of course, in the classroom, those are the kids I probably spend a lot more time with because they just need the extra support, inside the classroom. So,
And I know you two being a mom as well. I actually had a few
mhm.
classes with Kaden
Uh-huh.
when I was in elementary school. And
Okay.
so how would you say, like, with you being like involved as a teacher and a parent, like how do you see like that correlation? I know you were saying that you see that the students who need the least amount of help, definitely you see more parental involvement, but do you find that to be like a very key factor in the education of like your students and maybe your own children as well?
I do because I feel like even like certain demographics of students that have less, it's something about certain cultures that they don't show up so much, and those students need the most amount of help. And so even myself, like my kids, because I'm here and I'm in school, when they were young, I was, of course, active and knowing what was going on, but that was because I was here. So once they got to middle school, I think I personally pulled back some, and high school even less. And so like I try to show up, but it's just I don't know what it is about why we don't show up as much as we should, but for myself, because they were here, I did it, but as they started to leave and go into middle school and high school, I didn't have as much, I guess, presence in their decisions and things like that. But I mean, they would talk to me about it, and I kind of let them, okay, well, what do you think? Well, if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. If it came down to it where there were issues that were happening or they weren't speaking up for themselves and things like that, of course I would advocate for them. But other than that, like as far as like going to all of the meetings and, oh, mom, we have back to school night and things like that, I probably don't participate as much as I should. But they have been doing well, so I think it's been okay.
That's good to hear. I love to hear that. I know that once kids get into like high school and such, myself as a teenager, I
Hmm.
know like my mom is the same way. She's a sub right now and she's becoming a teacher at the moment.
Nice.
So yeah, so these are things that she's learning about as well, how to support her students. And obviously she did that with all three of her daughters as well.
Hmm.
And I was just curious to know, like, you personally growing up, I know, like, becoming a teacher and that whole process and all the education you received. How would you say, like,
Hmm.
when you're younger, how would you describe like your support system? Like, what's really carried you through?
So for me, I think I was a little different because I knew I wanted to be a teacher early on. And that was, when I was younger, my siblings are older, like 4 years and 6 years older. So there was a certain chunk when I was probably in upper elementary where I felt like an only child because they were in high school and, things like that. But I wanted to be a teacher. But my mom and dad, by that time, they were just kind of like, okay, do your homework, so they weren't as present. And I remember being younger and always asking my mom, how do you do this? How do you spell this? And she would always say, get a dictionary, look it up while she's, in the kitchen cooking. So, and my dad had no patience. So math homework was like a nightmare with him. And so for that reason though, I had a hard time with math. So like in class, I would learn, whatever the teacher was teaching, but then it always felt like the homework was so different than what I learned in class. So for whatever reason, I had a block. And it wasn't until I got to college that I actually took a math class that I got it and I enjoyed it. And I felt like, okay, so I don't really hate math, but it did create some anxiety. So like even now, like I know how to add and I know how to subtract, but there are certain things where I'll like, do I know this? And I'll second guess myself because it did take a long time for me to be comfortable in that. So my parents weren't as involved as a lot of the parents are today. And because it was a different time and you could figure out things and you had, your teachers would support you. My godmother was a teacher, so she was very supportive. So I think that's what kind of helped me to continue fulfilling my dream of becoming a teacher. But as a student, I tell my boys now, like, I was not the best student. My GPA is not what your GPA is now. So of course I expect better from you. And so now they kind of rub it in, but I'm like, you live and you learn and you still, make better choices and you can turn out all right. It'll work. So,
And I love how you brought up like how like, some of the stuff like from your childhood, like that anxiety, like, working on math with your dad, like same way with me.
uh,
And just like how that carried on even into adulthood. And
mhm.
I just like would like to know like how would you encourage or give some advice to maybe some younger students who may not be feeling as bright or, maybe comparing themselves to their classmates who are maybe excelling? Just how would you motivate them so that they don't have to carry on that anxiety or, just baggage with them as they progress in their education?
So like for us in first grade, kids they can be mean, but I think at the early age, they don't take it as harshly as they would in upper grades. So it's correctable. So they can say something mean, but it's not that damaging. So, but I just try to encourage a lot. And then we do try to focus on their mindset and, let them know you have a growth mindset. You don't give up. You got to keep trying. So we practice a lot of those lessons in the beginning of the school year to kind of set the foundation. And then throughout the school year, we have like our SEL lessons, our social emotional learning lessons that also teach, them how to be focused and, things that they can do for themselves, but then also how you treat other people. So like sometimes somebody will say, so I have a couple of students that have speech issues. And so they may say something and everyone will start laughing. And so I'll just like right away, oh, that's not funny. That's not how we treat our friends. And for the most part, my group has been pretty compassionate. So that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, things like that. But they have to be taught. So just early on, we try to give them like the mindset lessons and the SEL lessons.
And that's wonderful. I'm glad that that's something you guys are implementing in such young minds.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have any more questions for you today, but
Okay.
thank you so much for contributing. I'm gonna end the recording real fast.
All right.